The main focus of professional bodybuilding is the 8 mandatory poses, beginning of course with the front double bicep. We have the front lat spread, side chest. We turn around for the 2 back shots, rear double bi. We have the rear lat spread. We turn the guys back around for the side tricep, abs and thigh, and the most muscular. And that's about it. That is your 8 mandatory shots. And to some people, it's kind of boring. Not to me, of course, but I can understand that seeing the same poses over and over again, kind of repetitive, right? So it's always good when a guy, he capitalizes on a pose, such as a front double bicep, and throws a little sizzle, a little spice on it, such as Thierry Postel, and he was a master at doing that. I mean, these, what I like to call specialty poses, or non-mandatory shots, really do add an excitement to bodybuilding. I mean, Jay Cutler, a simple transition turns into a double-armed hoo-ah pose. And that, to me, just makes bodybuilding what it is. Now, today, we are going to take a look at 4 of my favorite aftermarket poses or specialty poses, non-mandatory shots. And we're going to begin with this one, a pose that I like to call the victory pose. Some people call it the cobra, the king cobra, I do believe. But as always, guys, you know me. Let's go back into the history of bodybuilding and take a look at some of the first examples of the victory pose. And Steve Reeves, now he hit this pose perfectly. He had his hands wide open, which is a little bit different than what people call the cobra. And then there's kind of this variation. I call this one the anchor pose. But of course, the victory shot, the victory pose, is the one that is, one of my favorites. And there is so many other variations and so many different specialty shots that I really did have to narrow it down to only 4, guys. And I probably will be making a part 2 of this. I'm sure most of you guys are thinking to yourself, well, didn't Sergio Oliva have a good victory pose? You would be right. He probably had the best victory shot. He had more of the cobra. He twisted his arms or his wrists over. Look at the size of his forearms in this shot. And that's what made a good victory shot. Huge forearms, big arms altogether, and huge lats and a small waistline. He was even seen hitting this shot from behind. Look at the victory shot. And talk about rare, you really didn't see anybody hitting this pose throughout the 80s. I mean, this here was maybe the one of the only examples. Gunter Rosbo, if you could imagine that. Frank Zane, was this a victory shot? It was kind of like the double bi that Thierry Postel was hitting, but I guess you could consider it a victory shot. But Zane was more known for this one. I like to call the anchor shot. But let us not forget about this dude. Fittingly enough, his name was Victor. Victor Richards. Of course, he never competed in the IFBB. I think he might have got his pro card, but basically, he did guest posings, and he did look tremendous, guys. Look at this victory shot. Paul Doulette, another rare, and these guys were all rare specimens, and that's what it took to deliver a good victory shot. And look at this dude right here, the blunder from down under. Lee Priest. Talk about forearms, arms, little tiny midsections. I mean, the last thing in your mind is striated glutes. Who cares about striated glutes? Look at this glorious body. Look at this. So, yeah, Lee Priest, pretty darn good. Look at this guy. Look at this dude. You know who this is? Anybody know? Anybody naming him at home? It's Will Harris. Here's a more known bodybuilder, and this is Sergio Oliva's son, Sergio Oliva Sr., and this is Sergio Oliva Jr. And what are the odds that he could hit a good victory shot too? And here's lightning striking twice. Now you're never going to see this anywhere else, a duel of victory shots, or cobras. This is Akeem Williams, and I guess he's probably one of the only guys of the current competitors that are able to hit this shot. But I guess at the end of the day, my favorite, or maybe the best person ever to hit this shot would be Sergio Oliva Sr. I don't think anybody in the history of the universe will ever hit a victory shot like this, or like you guys might like to call it, the Cobra shot. In fact, as a sign of respect, in my opinion, to Sergio Oliva Sr., this little moment happened at the Arnold Schwarzenegger Classic 2020, if I'm not mistaken. Sergio actually did Arnold's pose, the tilting rear double, and Arnold did a Sergio Oliva victory pose. What a moment in time. And this is a perfect little segue to the next pose, my next favorite shot, and it is the tilted rear double bicep. And I finished off the other ones by telling you my favorite pose, or the favorite person to hit the shot. Arnold Schwarzenegger is my favorite tilted rear double bicep. But he was far from the first. Look at this guy, John Grimmick, although he wasn't really hitting it to spec, was he? And Steve Reeves. This also was a different variation of it. Arnold hit this variation too. Wasn't until Reg Park. I think Reg Park was probably the first person to hit it. The arm forward, I think, should be leaning downward. Here is the Mr. Olympia 1966, and that is Chuck Sipes in the center, and he is hitting the tilted twisting, I guess you could call it, rear double bi. It's too gosh darn bad that Larry Scott, the guy right beside him, didn't hit it, because he had a fantastic one, maybe one of the best. Now, this is a perfect example of a tilted, twisting, rear double bi. And, of course, the next Mr. Olympia in line, Sergio Oliva Sr., we just seen him. He also had a pose variation. And him and Arnold, they dueled it out. And they both hit their version of the tilted rear double bicep. But in my opinion, like I said, guys, Arnold Schwarzenegger, he made this pose famous. And I think to solidify the fact that I personally think this is Arnold's favorite pose. I know most of you think it's the front double bicep, but in my opinion, I think it is this one, because it is the exact pose they use for the Arnold Classic trophy. And I know most of the time it looks like he's doing a front tilting, but it isn't. It's not. It's a rear tilted twisting double bi, because you can see the trophy. It's we can see the back. And do you remember Cedric McMillan asked him, he said, "Come on, Arnold, hit your pose," and he hit it with his suit and all. And of course, after Arnold's time, this pose became kind of a staple for the Mr. Olympia champions. You had Franco Columbo hitting it. Frank Zane had a variation of it. Even Chris Dickerson can be seen hitting the tilting, twisting rear double bi. And who could forget Samir Banu's pose, maybe one of the best. Lee Haney, of course, no exception. And even Dorian Yates with his big lumbering physique. Even he hit this shot. How about having a nice warm slice of me haggis? Ronnie Coleman, of course, the next champion, he hit it, but I didn't see Jay Cutler hitting this shot, and I checked. Phil Heath did hit it, of course. But there is so many guys that hit the tilting, twisting, rear double bi that really would take all day to show everybody that hit it. This guy here, however, definitely needs to be mentioned. This is the best of the modern tilting, twisting, rear doubles, Cedric McMillan. And may he rest in peace. Wow, what a shot. Now, the next pose is a little bit of a debate, I guess. It is the splits. That's right, guys, the splits. And you thought the Cobra pose was a rarity. This is as rare as a $3 bill, I guess. John Grimmick, in my estimation, the first ever bodybuilder to go up on that stage and hit the split pose, I guess, with no actual variation of the upper body. We're just kind of looking at the legs. And for years, nobody actually attempted this. I'm sure there was bodybuilders that could. You'd have to go to the movies to see a muscle man do the splits, like Jean-Claude Van Damme. But why are we showing him? He wasn't a bodybuilder, was he? Well, yes, he was, and he was hitting the splits on stage. So kudos to Jean-Claude Van Damme. Muscles from Brussels. Of course, Flex Wheeler in the early 90s, he was probably the most known guy to be able to hit the splits on stage. And what's more impressive is the fact that he could still do it at his heaviest. This was Flex Wheeler at the British Grand Prix. I think he was, oh gosh darn it. He was big. He was big. He could still pull this maneuver off. And talk about big guys being able to hit the splits. Ronnie Coleman, are you kidding me? Yeah, buddy. Nearly 300 pounds. He was doing it when he was maybe less than stellar as well at the Show of Strength, I think it was. Anyway. Sergio Oliva Sr., or Jr. rather, with Arnold Schwarzenegger. Come on. Anybody knew Sergio could hit the splits? Of course he can. Another new dude that can hit it is this dude, Andrew Jacked. Wow. And he can still do it too. Just found this is an older competition, but he definitely can still pull this maneuver off. Of course, if you ask me, Flex Wheeler will always be the greatest bodybuilder ever to be able to hit the split pose or split maneuver. And we got the final pose, last but most certainly not least, because this is probably my favorite pose, transitional pose or non-mandatory shot, specialty shot. Anybody guess who this is? No, it's not Arnold. It's Larry Scott. Larry Scott had one of the most fantastic mantis pose positions, the mantis pose of all time. A lot of people call this pose also the Dave Draper. That's right, Dave Draper. Might not have been the first guy to hit it. Scott might have been doing it first, but hey, Dave Draper made this his own. He was what, in his 70s? Still able to pull off this mantis pose position? And since we're doing the Arnold voice, we have to mention Arnold. You got to throw your wrist down a little bit. Yes, that's how you do it. Arnold, nobody was more famous for this shot. I mean, look at this. At the Olympia, 75 from pumping iron, arms and chest. And that's what it took. Arms and chest. Nobody will be able to reduplicate or duplicate. Not reduplicate. Duplicate this. If he was twins, it would be reduplicate. But anyway. Mike Katz. Looks like Krusty the Clown. Lou Ferrigno also, the Hulk, the Incredible Hulk. Hulk? Anybody?
What you gonna do, brother, when I lambaste you with these 24-inch pythons, brother?
But back to bodybuilding and back to Lee Haney and his mantis pose position. Wasn't the only Lee. Lee Labrada also snapping this pose from time to time. Fellow Austrian to Arnold Schwarzenegger, Andreas Munzer. He had a pretty good mantis pose position here. I think this is the only time I've ever seen him hit it. Very rare Gunter Schlierkamp. I think because he looked like Arnold, he hit it. But it was a very rare pose throughout the late 90s, early 2000s, even throughout all of the 90s. A few of the guys would actually hit this pose during photo shoots, like Kai Green, even Rolly Winkler. But Bubunder, as Louis Marco calls Rolly Winkler, he would actually hit this pose on stage. And I think maybe one of the last dudes to actually hit this, I think he used it as a mandatory shot, an actual side tricep, to be honest with you. But in my opinion, Dave Draper, I know Arnold's good too, but we're going to put Dave Draper as the greatest guy ever to hit the mantis pose position. I mean, Arnold already has the tilting rear double, so we'll give this one to Dave. Let us review, shall we? We had the victory pose, of course. We also had the tilting, twisting rear double bicep, followed by the mantis pose position. And did we forget one? The splits. Can you do the splits for us, Curry? Come on, just this one time. Ow, that must have hurt. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed this one as much as I enjoyed throwing it together. Fun. I thought I was going to put about 10 of these poses in this video, but I found out very rapidly that the time gets eaten up very quick as we're looking at all these fantastic shots. Mantis poses and victory shots. Come on, slapstick. Anyway, guys, hit thumbs up on the video. I appreciate all your views. Have a great night.